Hello everyone, we're Team Common Ground, and our problem sponsor is the United Nations Command Security Battalion, located at the Joint Security Area in Korea. The original problem statement we were given was to create a secure, convenient, and integrated platform for soldiers in the battalion to communicate. Over the course of the quarter, we conducted 122 interviews, and we settled on the final problem statement, focused on building rapport and understanding between US and South Korean personnel in the battalion to overcome language and cultural barriers. The rest of this presentation is a story of how we got there. So first, a little background. The Joint Security Area is located in the demilitarized zone, right in between North and South Korea. The purpose of this battalion is to secure this area and to ensure the safety of all the distinguished guests that come visit. This battalion is important because it symbolizes the US-South Korean alliance, and it is one of the most combined battalions on the peninsula, with US and South Korean soldiers working directly together. So based on the original problem statement we got, the team knew, hey, this is probably an IT problem. I mean, they're asking for a communications platform. So, as a group of 4 engineers, we felt pretty confident. We would just take existing commercial software and adapt it to what the battalion needed. Easy. So given that, we go into our week 1 first set of interviews feeling pretty good. And here's some excerpts from what we heard. If you look at it, most people that we talked to said their communication is actually face-to-face, not over radio or text. So here we were at the end of week 1, and we realized, hey, IT is actually not the problem. Our fancy tech solution Slack thing, not gonna help our battalion. In fact, the only IT problems they had, they'd already solved by switching to Signal.
All right, so realizing that it was not an IT problem, it was time for us to pivot. We were frustrated from day one because what we thought was the problem has been shut down just like that. So after conducting a few interviews, we decided to look at some other aspects such as culture and language, which led us to this MVP, the pointy-talkie card. So this pointy-talkie card was supposed to help American soldiers to better communicate with their Korean counterparts. However, we've also gotten mixed reviews about this MVP, saying that people didn't think this will work in a JSA context, and also the enlisted level does not really interact with the Korean side either. So shut down just like that again. So based on these mixed feedbacks and realizing that it's a problem for a very specific demographic within the battalion, we decided to explore how language and cultural differences lead to frictions in the higher level, and in which this case was the Tactical Operations Center, which is the brain of the battalion. So we've heard several people complain about communications in the TOC being having frictions, and at this point, we realized that this was a bottleneck between the ROC chain of command and the US chain of command, where every information has to go through the TOC to be able to share it between the 2 chain of commands. And through various interviews, we realized that, yes, there is a problem, and when there is a problem, there are high impacts on the operations of the battalion. However, what we also learned was that the battalion was actually working on a solution to move to the Tactical Operations Center to a new location to allow for more combined side-by-side seating layout that would allow for less miscommunications. And we also realized that there are issues outside the Tactical Operations Center.
So at this point, we're feeling pretty discouraged. We're halfway through the course. We've tried 3 ideas. They've all been shut down. So we get together, we meet, we sit down, and we think, through all the interviews you've had, what are the different pain points we've come across, and can we draw some common threads that would help us come to some solution? So when we thought about all the different things that we'd encountered, there were a number of different issues, such as these language issues, English versus Korean, cultural differences, this TOC bottleneck, and they all kind of focused on this one central effect, which was the impact on the personal working relationships and the group dynamics within the battalion, and that if we could address these different issues, it would improve the rapport and understanding between the US and ROC personnel. So now that we had our problem, who's going to help us get over the finish line? Our key champion, the UNCSB JSA battalion commander, who is going to help us implement the different solutions that we were encountering.
So
then we had a problem. We had someone who cared about it, who would champion it. And we took our first step out of the building physically, headed down to Monterey to the Defense Language Institute, where we spoke with the leadership of the Korean Language School to better understand what resources they had at their disposal to provide to the battalion or that the battalion could leverage. And we learned that there are two avenues by which the battalion can use these Defense Language Institute resources, one being online, free and accessible training for culture and language, as well as a physical mobile training team that could be brought to the battalion for training. And then by far the highlight of our quarter was we actually made a trip out to our sponsor in Korea, stayed in the barracks with them, visited them. And then also spoke to a bunch of senior leaders on the Korean Peninsula who would be various stakeholders in the problem that we were trying to solve. And the most influential interview that we had while we were there was with Lieutenant Colonel Lim, the ROK Deputy Commander. He's the most senior South Korean officer in the battalion. And it was important to speak with him to get a better understanding of how the South Korean side sees this problem, because until then we were having a lot of difficulty speaking to people currently in the battalion that are on that South Korean side. So during our trip in Korea, we explored numerous MVPs through a variety of experiments, one of which is provided here. And that was handing out sticky notes to soldiers across the battalion, both US and South Korean soldiers, to get a better understanding of what they believe to be the goal of the battalion. Because through research and through interviews, we were learning that it's really important if they're going to be working together, if they're a combined battalion, they need to be working towards a common goal. And so what we learned is that there is some divergence in terms of what people believe to be the goal. Some of it is reflective of the current geopolitical situation, which we found to be interesting. But overall, we learned a lot through this particular experiment. But our kind of overarching key learnings from our trip are kind of the top two, which ended up feeding into what our two key recommendations are. The first being on personnel management, and the second being on in-processing and how to get the soldiers up to speed very quickly. And kind of the quote that really embodies this problem and also just working with soldiers on the Korean Peninsula is this bottom one. The US hasn't been there for 66 years. The US has been there 1 year, 66 times. And the reason for that is that the US basically has 1 year tours in the Korean Peninsula, and so therefore things change quickly and not much is institutionalized. But on this Korea trip, we really confirmed that what we were working on was the real problem. There were feasible and impactful solutions to it. And so our morale was very high at this point, and then we spent the next couple of weeks kind of working on solidifying that solution. But obviously this came after a very rocky period in which we had a lot of ups and downs as discussed, but ultimately we were in the green zone.
Yeah, so what's next? How do we bring our ideas to fruition? Our two-step action plan first is providing a menu of options that our battalion commander can implement right away, and that's including things like Rachel was mentioning regarding personnel and in-processing. The second is connecting our battalion with outside resources that they weren't aware of, such as the Defense Language Institute, as well as civilian organizations that promote US-Korean relationships that could help them. And another next step mentioned is a few of us are interested in seeing how can we publish and distribute our learnings across the Korean Peninsula, because there's a variety of other places where the US-Korean relationship we believe could benefit from some of the things that we've come across. And so it's been a really whirlwind quarter. We've had a lot of ups and downs, but it's been an incredible experience. We're happy to have tackled this problem, and we're grateful to everyone that's been able to assist us throughout this process. So thank you.
We are Team Common Ground. Our sponsor for Hacking for Defense is the United Nations Command Security Battalion at the Joint Security Area in South Korea. As the most forward deployed unit in South Korea, the unit is tasked with securing the Joint Security Area along the demilitarized zone. The battalion is a fully combined battalion of US and South Korean troops, making it one of a kind. The battalion initially presented us with the technical problem of communication systems compatibility. Yet we soon learned through interviews that the root of the problem is that of building rapport and understanding between US and South Korean personnel within the battalion. During the following weeks, we conducted a series of interviews with current battalion personnel. We used LinkedIn to contact those who previously worked in the unit, both Koreans and Americans. Beyond JSA personnel, we also spoke with organizational cultural specialists and academics to better understand how similar problems are dealt with within the civilian sector. The most influential moment for our team was in the middle of the quarter when we made a trip across the Pacific to our sponsor battalion located in Korea. as part of the course's emphasis on getting out of the building. We interviewed people ranging from recently enlisted privates to lieutenant generals to civilian workers and ambassadors. By the end of the trip, we had confirmed our hypothesis that building cultural rapport and understanding is key to improving military interoperability and the functioning of the battalion. Our immersive experience also went beyond customer discovery, as we lived alongside the soldiers in the barracks, did morning physical training with them, and ran in a Spartan race. The culmination of our learnings and experiences is a menu of potential courses of action presented to the battalion commander. The courses of action are classified into 4 categories: situational awareness, combined recreation, combined missions, and personnel management. From these 4 categories, our key recommendations are 1, requesting fluent Korean speakers for key roles, 2, battalion-specific in-processing, 3, a professional development day to dissect what is working well and what can be improved upon, and 4, more frequent combined exercises.
Excuse-moi.